Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of your Daily Guides. Today, I want to talk about why I personally believe Chisa has a very real argument for being one of the most valuable characters Wuthering Waves has ever released, and why even now, I think a lot of players are underestimating just how future-proof her kit actually is. Before we get into it, if you're new to the channel, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe as we do cover most Gacha content on this channel, including in-depth guides and walkthroughs for Wuthering Waves. With that said, let's get into it. The reason I wanted to make this video is because I've been seeing a lot of discussion lately. Some players are saying Chisa is completely unnecessary, while others are treating her like a must-pull character. Personally, I don't think either extreme is entirely correct. I don't think she's mandatory for every account, but I do think she's one of the safest long-term investments we've seen so far, and that's why I keep comparing her to Bennett from Genshin Impact. Now, obviously, they're not identical characters. That's not what I'm saying. What I mean is that both characters provide something that remains useful regardless of how the game evolves. Bennett stayed relevant because he offered utility that countless future characters could benefit from. Chisa feels similar because of the way her kit interacts with stacking debuff archetypes. When you look at Wuthering Waves, every team tends to revolve around a specific mechanic or identity. You've got traditional main DPS units, you've got characters that focus on enabling specific effects, and you've got archetypes built around stacking debuffs, such as Spectro, Frazzle, Aero, Erosion, and whatever future variants Kuro decides to introduce down the line. The core of Chisa's value comes from the fact that she directly contributes additional stacks to those archetypes. If your team revolves around Spectro Frazzle, she helps increase those stacks. If your team revolves around Aero Erosion, she helps increase those stacks as well. Her role isn't tied to a single element or a single DPS. Instead, her value comes from amplifying the stacking mechanic itself. That's the part I think a lot of people overlook. Most supports are tied to specific teams or specific characters. Chisa is tied to a gameplay system. As long as Kuro continues designing characters around stacking debuffs, she automatically becomes relevant whenever a new DPS enters that ecosystem. The moment a future character arrives and their damage revolves around building stacks of a debuff, Chisa immediately enters the conversation as one of the strongest potential teammates. And it doesn't even stop there. On top of helping those archetypes generate more stacks, she also brings additional utility through her own debuffs and defense reduction. So you're not only increasing the effectiveness of the team's primary mechanic, you're also making enemies take more damage overall. That's a huge part of why she scales so well alongside future releases. In general, when I evaluate whether a character is future-proof, I look at whether their value depends on current numbers or current teammates. If a character is only strong because of today's meta, they can easily fall off. But when a character's strength comes from interacting with an entire category of team mechanics, that's when they tend to survive multiple patches and multiple generations of DPS releases. That's exactly where Chisa stands for me. Now, does that mean every player needs to pull ever? No, and I don't think that's a fair recommendation. For free-to-play players especially, every banner comes with an opportunity cost. Pulling Chisa means not pulling something else. If you're saving for a future DPS you care more about, or you're working with limited resources, skipping her doesn't suddenly ruin your account. What I would say is that she's one of those characters who becomes more valuable the longer your account exists. Every time a new stacking debuff archetype appears, every time a new DPS is released that benefits from additional stacks, her value gets another chance to increase. That's a very different situation from characters whose usefulness is tied to a single team composition. For my own account, this is actually something I've been thinking about a lot because I don't have Chisa. Looking back, there have definitely been situations where having her available would have made building certain teams significantly easier. Whenever a team revolves around that stacking mechanic, she naturally fits into the conversation because of what she contributes. So if you're asking whether she's a must-pull, my answer is still no. But if you're asking whether she's one of the smartest long-term pulls in Wuthering Waves right now, I think there's a very strong argument for that. Characters that support an entire gameplay archetype tend to age much better than characters that only support one specific unit. If you already enjoy teams built around Spectro Frazzle, Aero Erosion, or any future stacking debuff mechanics, she's probably one of the safest investments you can make. If you're focused on other archetypes or you're saving for a future character that's a higher priority for your account, then skipping her is perfectly reasonable as well. The main thing to keep in mind is that her value isn't just about today's teams. It's about what happens 6 months from now, a year from now, and whenever the next generation of stacking-focused characters arrives. But that's just my take on it. Let me know down below whether you pulled Chisa, skipped her, or you're planning to grab her on a rerun. Do you think she's one of the most future-proof characters in Wuthering Waves right now, or do you think players are overrating her long-term value?